Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 6, episode 37, Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. Jonathan Lidskin is not here with us tonight, but we do have what's becoming an annual episode of the coach retirement in September, October emergency pod. Last year was Tony Bennett. Now it's Bruce Pearl. We've got Brandy Mack here. Brandy, welcome to Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. Wish it wasn't under these circumstances, but hey, things happen.
Hey, if I told you 10 years ago that you'd be coming on a podcast to discuss Auburn's two-time Final Four coach retiring, I'd say that would be a great circumstance to go on the podcast.
This is true. Bruce had like an incredible career at Auburn and really did bring Auburn out of basically like the worst possible a place a program can be in a Power Four conference like the SEC, and truly did just turn it around. So it's kind of a bittersweet moment, what happened yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think it was necessarily surprising. It's jarring to see that notification. But this has been rumored for a while, regardless of whether it was for going into politics to get his son the job or whatever it is. This had been rumored for a while, and it shouldn't come as a massive surprise, but like this timing, it's definitely jarring.
Yeah, I'd say from like a timing standpoint, like the past, 3 or 4 months since the Final Four had happened, there definitely was rumors, more so though related, I guess, to the political aspect of this, which in his video, he confirmed he's not planning to run for Senate. But a lot of the rumors were tied to that because he was going on podcasts and shows and talking about his religious and political beliefs very publicly. But yeah, for it to happen kind of on the first day of practice, definitely, I think, a surprise. I think a lot of us thought that if he was going to retire and not run for Senate, he would kind of go on a retirement tour, kind of like what Coach K did. So I would say it is, but it isn't a surprise at the same time. Like the timing definitely is a little surprising in the fact that he is retiring and not going into politics and is going to be staying around Auburn and within the athletic department. So that part of it is a little surprising that he didn't wait for at least, this season to conclude and announce it going into next year's off season.
Yeah, and the other key was he did confirm in the video that he considered running for Senate. It was something that he was thinking about. It was something that he thought a lot about. He had a lot of meetings about it. There was some reporting a couple of weeks ago that he'd spent months this summer meeting with people to determine the viability of a run. And just maybe the fact that like that is now part of his life, regardless of whether he runs or not. He is a figure in that space now. It is something that he has spent a lot of time doing. Maybe it's just it got to a point where it was weighing on him, and he didn't know if he could give everything that he's been giving to the Auburn basketball program. That is possible, and it is also possible that he really. And there was also reporting today that he'd been trying to get his son, Steven, who's now the new head coach, as the coach in waiting for years. And Auburn didn't want that. Auburn didn't want to name him the coach in waiting. They wanted to see what happened. And this is kind of another way for Bruce to kind of get a leg up on that. But with the 5-year contract that Steven is getting, it's pretty clear that Auburn's on the same page too.
Yeah, so some people definitely did allude to that. Was this a way for him just to confirm that Steven would become the coach? But after we went to the Final Four and just everything that Bruce has given to this program from where it was at when he started at Auburn, our local reporters, specifically our On3 reporter, Justin Hokanson, did put out an article that John Cohen, our athletic director, and Bruce had been in talks about getting Steven head coach in waiting on a multi-year contract in his contract. That just never happened because he had already signed a lifetime contract with Auburn. Then he goes on to get another Final Four and is in this period of time where he's like, I don't know if I want to continue being a coach anymore. And I also think something else that played a factor here too is that he did become a grandfather this year of multiple grandchildren. So I think it was a lot of things just weighing on his heart, just knowing the type of person that he is and how much he values his family and who's there in Auburn. So I definitely think Auburn was on the same page. If they weren't, I don't think Steven would have gotten a 5-year contract. And I also don't think that Bruce would have been offered the position in the athletic director's office that he was offered. So I definitely think he was on the same page with administration. Maybe the timing of it wasn't perfect to them, but I think it still makes sense to go out on top, at least for him. And clearly Auburn was fine with it given the contract that they gave Steven.
Bruce Pearl was the longest tenured coach in the SEC before yesterday. Now it's Rick Barnes, but it was Bruce Pearl. He held 2 SEC jobs. He won at both of those places. Obviously, Tennessee is a place where basketball is a little bit had been a little bit bigger of a deal than basketball was at Auburn before Bruce Pearl got the job, and I think that that's the key for this. He won at Auburn. He won at a place where basketball was incidental. It wasn't something that really filled the arena. Now you get campouts for every SEC home game. They're lining up. They're lining up down the block 3 hours before tip off every game. And this is something Jonathan said, that the most impressive thing that Bruce Pearl did isn't anything necessarily on the court. Obviously, this has to do with it, but it's that he got Auburn fans to care about basketball. He got not just Auburn fans to care about basketball, but now Auburn cares about basketball. All of a sudden, Alabama cares about basketball. Auburn and Alabama care about basketball. All of a sudden, Mississippi and Mississippi State care about basketball, and Texas A&M cares about basketball, and Georgia cares about basketball. And now you're looking at the SEC being the premier basketball conference, and Auburn was one of the main catalysts for this because you were always going to have Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky, and that hasn't changed. But now you have Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State. Mizzou was a good basketball program in the Big 12, and that was a solid addition for SEC basketball. Oklahoma and Texas now even care about basketball in the SEC a little bit. Texas definitely cares about basketball. Oklahoma probably cares about basketball. But that's the thing. Auburn cares about Bruce Pearl, and they care about basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. And the impact on the SEC was, I feel like it can't be understated, because when Bruce got hired, the SEC was definitely in a different spot in basketball than it was compared to where it's at right now, where he's at, retiring and stuff. And so, like you said, yeah, all those schools now do care about basketball because Auburn cares, because it made Alabama care. And when 2 schools that kind of drive a lot of the big revenue sport in football seem to care about the second biggest revenue sport now, and that's basketball, it's gonna make other people in the conference also care and want to win. And we saw that last year in the SEC, the best season that the SEC has ever had, and that has a lot to do with teams just following the path, schools just following the path of other schools. And I do agree. I do think that started with Auburn, and kudos to Jay Jacobs, who was our athletic director at the time, for just taking a second chance on Bruce Pearl, because a lot of teams wouldn't. And we're still seeing that in college basketball today. I think Will Wade and Chris Beard are 2 other examples of schools where, guys have been given second opportunities too. And that's just because people care about basketball and they care about winning and making the sport better with better coaches.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about Bruce Pearl. This was at a second chance home. Like, this is a place, his legacy is, even before you get into any of his political, the way he's expressed himself politically over the past few years, he's already a controversial figure. He's already somebody who a lot of college basketball fans don't like. But the fact of the matter is, Auburn doesn't care what most people think about their coach. No school cares about what most people think about their coach. But Auburn especially feels very like we will ride for ourselves. And it's a very we are an Auburn family and nothing else matters type thing at Auburn, more so than even most other SEC schools.
Yeah, definitely. Auburn absolutely prides itself on like the Auburn family mantra and like Auburn being Auburn, that type of thing. And you're right, we don't care what other people think about us, because if we did, we probably wouldn't have hired Bruce Pearl. I know Illinois fans hate him, Tennessee fans hate him. A lot of other people, especially kind of where you're located at in the Northeast, don't like him either. But I think too, when you get to know Bruce as a person outside of just kind of what his past and history is, it makes a lot of sense why Auburn did hire him. Auburn kind of prides itself on like close-knit family bonds within their fan base and within their coaches and their students and that type of thing. And that really is kind of like what Bruce is. And I think one of the best examples of this is the Outlive Cancer foundation that he brought to Auburn, which is an annual game that happens every year where he's raising money for cancer, but also allowing people to get tested for prostate cancer literally at the game. And it's just bringing more awareness to that. And so small things like that, to me, like that kind of played a part in I'm assuming probably why Bruce was hired initially, because when you kind of peel the layers back to who he is as a person, it really fit the Auburn culture and the family aspect that, you know, Auburn prides itself on.
I think that's kind of some of like the whole Bruce Pearl, the idea of a guy from the Northeast, a guy from Boston, being the perfect fit culturally at a place like Auburn. It's kind of what makes college sports so great. Like no two places are the same. No two coaches are the same. And like you can love, hate, not care about Bruce Pearl, but there's always going to be a group of people that love, hate, and don't care about you, no matter where you are in college sports. And it just so happened that for Bruce Pearl, that place was nowhere near culturally where he came from, which is one of the most interesting things about this whole situation. And then obviously for what he did for Auburn basketball, they're coming off a Final Four appearance. With the team the way it is right now, you lose almost all of the key production from last year. And Broom's gone, Banker Mazzara's gone, Cardwell's gone, more and more are gone. Obviously, Pettiford's back, which is huge. But it does kind of make sense that this is a turning point. This is kind of a transition into a new era of Auburn basketball players. And it kind of makes more sense for him to leave at this point versus if he did at this point last year with as much returning as they had. Auburn, though, still probably going to be pretty good this year. I don't know if they're going to be a top 15, top 20 team, but they have the talent. They still have the coaching staff that stuck around. Ira Bowman, Mike Burgomaster. It's not a bad staff by any means. So I do think Auburn is still going to be pretty good this year. I just don't know if this. I don't know if the ceiling is quite as high, and I don't know if the floor is quite as high. But the median outcome is pretty much the same.
Right. For like the actual team itself, I think the concerning drop off from last year, outside of just like having no continuity at all outside of Tahad, is going to be the defense. Our defense was so good last year and had such a presence inside, and we're just not going to have that this year. We don't have Janai Broom. We don't have Dylan Cardwell. We don't have those guys. And while they were replaced with talented players, it's still just not going to be at the level that it was last year. But I also think that our offense is going to be a little bit different too. We're not going to see that half-court offense that we really relied on heavily with Janai, a little bit more fast-paced, more tempo. So, I do agree. I think we're going to be good. We're definitely going to be a top 20 team this year, unless the coaching aspect of it doesn't kind of follow suit. But one of the things that I think that's important too in this transition from Bruce to Steven is that, like you said, the entire coaching staff has remained the same. And last year it was spoken a lot at press conferences about how both Steven, Mike, and actually Chad, we did have one departure unrelated to basketball before Bruce announced. That's Chad Pruitt. Those three guys really did a ton of scouting for us last year, and that was said multiple times in press conferences by Bruce. So Chad Pruitt actually left right after the Final Four to go be a pastor and pursue that, and had kind of been with Bruce from the start of his career at Auburn, which is really interesting. But we don't have him. But outside of that, we did hire a GM who is expected to kind of step into an assistant role as well, in Matt Gatens. So, I think the staff is there, and then the personnel, it'll be really interesting. We have an international player this year in Filip Jovic. So that'll be kind of something different too in the fold. And as long as obviously we keep everybody, because today the transfer portal did open for 30 days since Bruce departed. So given we keep everybody that we have on our roster now, I do think we'll be good. Defense we'll see a bit of a drop off, but we're going to see a different offense too. I think at times Bruce was really, really married to the flex offense. And while I think Steven will be too, I think he offers a little bit more flexibility or maybe a little bit more wrinkles that can kind of be put in there. So actually I'm really looking forward to kind of the offensive side of things and what else might be possible there with Steven as head coach.
One of the kind of things that I saw online over the last day or so was just a lot of people acting surprised that Steven Pearl is the new head coach at Auburn, acting like he wouldn't have been a candidate for other D1 coaching jobs if he wanted to get, like, if Steven Pearl wanted to be a head coach in March and Bruce Pearl was 5 years from retiring, which, I mean, he's 65. There's older coaches out there. If Bruce Pearl was not like considering retirement, Steven Pearl, if he wanted to be a head coach somewhere, would be a head coach elsewhere right now. The fact of the matter is he's been a very well respected assistant on a very successful SEC staff, and there are plenty of programs that would have loved to interview him if they got the chance. So I don't think that the narrative around Steven Pearl is anywhere near accurate, really. There obviously are a lot of question marks. We have no idea how good of a head coach he's going to be. The culture thing is definitely something that I associate a lot more with Bruce than I do with Steven. You will have to see how that kind of plays out. But I think that in giving him a 5-year contract, in showing confidence and showing faith that he can be the guy, it kind of gives the idea of the continuation. And sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. But if his name were Stephen Scott, he would still be the next head coach at Auburn, given these circumstances over the last however many years. He was going to be the next head coach at Auburn. Obviously, probably started his coaching career because his name was Steven Pearl. But at this point, Steven Pearl isn't just Bruce Pearl's kid. He's a well-respected assistant across the country at this point. Yeah, and just to go over kind of his journey to this point, 2014 to 2015 is when he joined the staff as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. Then 2015 to 2017, he was a director of basketball operations. Then 2017 to 23, he was an assistant. And then 23 to 25, he was an associate head coach. So the narrative that he was just handed this, I think, is a little silly when you actually dig into the details of it. He really did serve in all kind of aspects of the basketball world on staff there. And he was the highest coach on staff too, especially after Wes Flanagan left to go join Ole Miss's staff 2 years ago. So when that happened, that's when he was promoted to associate head coach. So, I mean, I do think that he's put in the work and he's earned this. I definitely think his personality, though, is different than Bruce's. They are different people, and that aspect will be interesting to see how that plays a part, because Bruce has this very convincing and soft side of him that players see and that fans have seen, whereas Steven is definitely more like young, confident, maybe a little bit of arrogance in there too, which can be good or bad, who knows. And so it'll be interesting to see, which Bruce does have that same little bit of arrogance too. I know a lot of public people and people who don't like him have probably seen that side of him as well and tend to only see that side, but it'll be interesting to see how Steven kind of dials his personality to kind of fit this new position that he's in. For the 5-year contract aspect of it, I think that
I agree. Like the continuity aspect's really good. So that should be good for recruiting. And I would say probably our best recruiter on staff is Ira outside of Steven. I would put Steven second before going into this. So Steven is who recruited Walker Kessler to Auburn, and we saw how that turned out. So I trust him on the recruiting trail. It'll be interesting to see kind of how he goes about in the actual like in-game coaching. I think that's what a lot of us don't know about with him, but I think a lot of us feel very confident in his ability to recruit. That was obviously one of Bruce's best qualities too. So yeah, I tend to agree that from a continuity aspect, like that is super important, and the 5-year contract makes sense, which we don't have details yet for, what that buyout looks like, but I definitely am curious from like a monetary standpoint. But I agree, the continuity aspect's huge, and I think plays a part in the decision here too.
Yeah, I also think that there was also like some stuff with Bruce Pearl as a coach that I thought like, hey, he does a lot of things really well. He also does a lot of things really not well. Maybe Steven does some of those things that Bruce doesn't do very well. Well, there were some game management things that over the last couple of years with Bruce that I didn't understand. But then there were some things I think he puts together great staffs. He's a great culture builder. He's had great game plans in certain games. I think there are certain types of teams that his teams fare better against than others. And I wonder if Steven Pearl can kind of bridge kind of some of those gaps. Obviously, there will be things that Steven does that Bruce didn't. There will be things that Bruce did that Steven doesn't. But I think that this is going to be instantly vaults into one of the more fascinating teams in the country. From a team that I was kind of like, all right, they'll be around, they'll be a thing. I'll watch them because they'll be good. To a team that I'm like, all right, I definitely have to watch this because it's a new coach, it's a first-time head coach, and it's something new. Definitely interested. Brandy, thank you so much for joining us on this emergency pod discussing Bruce Pearl's retirement, and we'll see you next time on Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I forgot to do the outro.